Okay, let's dive in. We have a really interesting source today. On the surface, it's a sermon from a church in Missouri.
Right from the house church, Pastor Darren.
Exactly. But if you peel back that layer, what you're really looking at is a talk on, well, on the psychology of contentment.
And maybe even a kind of spiritual economics.
Mm.
His whole argument is built around this idea of sufficiency over excess.
Yeah, and he seems to think most people, even very religious ones, are running on a kind of a spiritual fragility, that they just couldn't handle a real crisis.
And to make that point, he starts with this incredibly stark comparison.
The one in the airport.
Yeah. He talks about visiting a woman in Zimbabwe who lives in a mud hut, a dirt floor, and oven outside. That's it. And he says she's just filled with this incredible joy.
And then he contrasts that with what he sees in a modern airport.
Right. People with all the gadgets, all the comforts, surrounded by abundance.
And they are, in his words, miserable, anxious, angry.
It's the classic stuff versus joy argument, but he uses it to build this idea of two different identities.
Okay, what are they?
Church identity versus identity in Christ.
And what's the functional difference there? I mean, to him...
Well, church identity is a habit. It's external. You go to the building on Sunday, you do the routine. It depends on a place's schedule.
So if the building goes away...
Your identity is shaken. But identity in Christ, that's internal. He points to the Apostle Paul in prison.
From Philippians, where Paul says he's learned to be content whether he's full or hungry.
Exactly. The idea is if your happiness is tied to external things, like the airport travelers, you're fragile. But if it's tied to an internal sense of sufficiency, you can survive anything.
And speaking of survival, this is where he moves from philosophy into some pretty wild personal stories.
Oh, yeah. The radical provision anecdotes, these are what make the message really memorable.
The grocery list story has to be my favorite. So he and his wife, Peggy, they have literally no money for food. Zero.
Which is a tough spot for anyone.
For sure. But he tells her to make a grocery list anyway. And he says, don't just put needs on it, put wants.
Which feels, completely backward, right?
Totally. So she puts things like Oreos and bananas on the list. And he claims that just a couple of hours later, 2 vans pull up.
Don't tell me.
They fill their living room with groceries. And he swears it matched the list exactly, down to the Oreos.
That's a bold claim. It perfectly fits his narrative, though.
It does. And he has another one about his father and the stock market.
Right. His dad gets this spiritual prompt to pull all his investments out.
Just before a crash.
Immediately before. He said his coworkers thought he was absolutely crazy. The market was booming.
And then it wasn't. They lost hundreds of thousands, and his dad's money was safe.
It's a powerful story.
Yeah.
But he's also careful. You mentioned he cashed in his own retirement to start the church.
Yes, but he puts a huge warning label on that one. I noticed that.
A really critical one. He looks at the congregation and says, and this is almost a direct quote, "Don't you dare do this without you knowing it's God."
So it's faith, not just recklessness.
He's advocating for wisdom, for listening, not just blindly acting.
So what's the big picture here? Why is he hammering this theme of sufficiency and crisis preparedness so hard right now?
It's all about future-proofing the faith of his congregation. He even brings up COVID.
When churches couldn't meet in person.
Precisely. His whole point is, what if that happened again? What if the church had to go underground permanently? He's worried that people wouldn't know how to function without him, without the building.
So he's trying to move them from relying on a structure to having a self-sustaining faith.
Yes, so they can lead themselves and lead others. If you only rely on the pastor, you're vulnerable. If you rely on, as he puts it, Jesus being enough, then you're resilient.
He ends with a really interesting distinction between following and pursuing.
It sounds like a small difference, but for him, it's everything.
How so?
Following can be passive. You're just kind of walking behind someone else, not paying too much attention.
Like a tourist.
Exactly. But pursuing, that implies intent. It implies focus, energy. You're actively chasing something.
So it's the difference between watching a nature documentary about a mountain and actually putting on the gear and climbing it yourself.
That's a perfect way to put it. He's calling them to be climbers, not viewers.
So here's the thought we want to leave you with. Pastor Darren's core argument is that real contentment, real resilience, comes from detaching from the excess.
So the question is, if you stripped away your job title, your bank account, your gadgets,
would you still know who you are? And would that person be enough?
a tough question.
It is. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you on the next one.